Have you ever felt like everyone expects you to keep going, even when everything inside you screams for a break? That if you stop, you disappoint the world. But if you keep going, you break inside? This is the silent reality that many live, but few have the courage to face out loud. Today, you will learn about a story that has become a symbol of something much greater than medals, titles, or expectations. A story about invisible courage, about the weight of silencing one's own pain to maintain an image of strength, and about the moment when someone chooses to be human before being a legend. Simone Biles. You know the name. You might even remember the applause, the impossible pirouettes, the packed podiums. But what you're about to discover may surprise you. Because behind gymnastics' most decorated athlete was a girl dealing with deep trauma, suffocating pressures, and a silent mental battle that no amount of gold could cure. She was abused, discredited, and she decided that her mind was worth more than Olympic gold. And it was that choice, as invisible as it was powerful, that divided the world. While many asked why, she quietly taught the value of choosing yourself. A choice that didn't fit into the sports headlines, but that changed the way the world views mental health, performance, and success. Here, each story is a spark. Each video is a safe space to remember who you are, even when the world tries to make you forget. And if you've ever felt like you had to be strong all the time, maybe this story is for you. Stay with me until the end. Because this is not just a biography, it is a mirror. It is about all the times you also tried to be everything to everyone and forgot to be something for yourself. Simone not only overcame impossible gymnastics, she faced the weight of a society that demands performance without pause, applause without context, and victory without vulnerability. By refusing to compete in the Olympics, she did something that no medal could buy. She chose herself, and perhaps this is the most revolutionary decision of all. But what happens when a black woman, at the top of her game, decides to stop? When she says no to the spectacle and yes to her limits? When she defies everything expected of her? This choice resonated. It generated criticism, yes, but it also opened doors for real dialogues about pressure, emotional pain, and the right to fail. Or rather, the right to stop. Have you ever been through this? Have you ever had to pretend that everything was fine, just so as not to disappoint anyone? Then this story is also yours. And what comes next will show you, in detail, the exact moment when everything changed. It was in that moment, in the silence between pressure and courage, that Simone Biles taught us something no coach ever could. That prioritizing your own sanity is not weakness, it's pure strength. That sometimes stopping is the boldest move anyone can make. While the world screamed for spectacle, she responded with presence. While they waited for yet another medal, she delivered a lesson in humanity. And perhaps that's what touches us most. The fact that, even at her peak, she had the courage to say, enough. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what has touched you the most so far. It could be a part of the story, a feeling you have experienced, or even something you have silently noticed and never had the space to share. Your voice matters here. It is what transforms this video into a conversation, the screen into an exchange, this story into a community. And if this type of content helps you remember who you are, or who you want to be again, like this video. Because when you click there, the algorithm understands that these conversations matter, and more people who may need exactly this can be reached. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. If you feel that this is a place where your truths fit, subscribe to the channel. Because every week we bring real stories, with depth, with soul. Here, it's not just about those who won, but about those who chose themselves in the midst of the fall. And this journey still has a lot to show. At the height of her fame, with the world spotlight on her, Simone Biles was no longer just an athlete. She was a symbol, a product, a collective projection of perfection. And yet, or perhaps precisely because of that, she carried a kind of fatigue that cannot be measured in performance numbers. A fatigue of the soul. The kind that doesn't show on the body, but explodes from within. And when she finally said no, when she refused to compete in the Olympic final, the world reacted as if she had broken an invisible pact, that of being invincible. Abused by those who should have protected her, discredited by those who should have applauded her, she spent years training to live up to everyone's expectations except her own. There is something deeply cruel in the way we treat those who dare to pause, especially when that person is a woman, black, a global figurehead, and young. We expect figures like that to keep delivering, overcoming, smiling, even when all they need to do is stop. And stopping, in this system, is seen as weakness. But what if it's the other way around? What if true strength lies precisely in the decision to refuse pressure, to preserve oneself? Because no one saw what she was already carrying. No one saw behind the scenes of her flying body, the painful memories, the traumas that were never treated, the sleepless nights, the automatic smiles, the routine of a perfectionism that demands every last drop of energy. Simone did not give up, she resisted. And this resistance, silent, intimate, not televised, was perhaps her greatest victory. There's a place inside us where all these pains accumulate, where the world's voice becomes so loud that our own is lost. And for many people, including perhaps you, this place is familiar. The place where you keep going even when you have no strength. Where you pretend to be fine because stopping seems too dangerous. Where you are called ungrateful for not smiling in the midst of success. Where the fear of disappointment becomes a prison. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is something in Simone's journey that reveals a hidden truth about transformation and identity. The idea that success is not measured only by trophies, but by the ability to say, "This isn't right for me." By the courage to break cycles, to break the logic of self-exploitation disguised as excellence. By the decision to put one's own emotional health above performance. This choice is revolutionary and deeply lonely. Because when you start choosing yourself, not everyone will understand. In fact, many will react exactly as they did to her. Judgment, astonishment, rejection. But that's where the turning point begins. The moment you face the pain that no one sees. When you decide that you're not going to carry the world on your shoulders anymore just because they said you can handle it. When you stop trying and start living. That decision, invisible, intimate, transformative, changes everything. Not from the outside, but from the inside. And that's when true reconstruction begins. Comment here. That makes sense to me. What happened there, in that moment of absolute silence, was much more than a sporting choice. It was an emotional decision, a mental decision, a spiritual decision, an invisible decision, one that no one sees, but that completely shapes the course of a life. Simone Biles, faced with millions of eyes and overwhelming expectations, didn't just retreat, she reconnected. She looked within and amid the noise of an entire Olympics, heard something that had perhaps been muffled for a long time, her own truth. I choose to live whole, not to win broken. This phrase was not said over microphones. It was not printed in the newspapers right away, but it was felt, it was embodied. It was the thread that separates collapse from reconstruction. And when she made this decision, perhaps no one there realized the depth of what was happening. Because there is still a dangerous myth that courage is just carrying on, that strength is resisting until you fall, that success is not letting anyone down. But what about when the price of carrying on is yourself? What Simone did was to rescue her own identity in a scenario where everything was pushing her out of herself, and that, in itself, would be huge. But there was more. There was a cultural impact. There was a shaking of the foundations of a system that always celebrated results, but never the health of those who produced them. The hidden truth is that no one wants to see the collapse of those who represent excellence, because that forces everyone to face their own limits. And she showed with a silent choice that true revolution happens when someone puts themselves first, not for ego, but for emotional survival. This invisible decision by Simone became a collective mirror. And like any mirror, it is not always comfortable to look at, because it reminded us of something we try to forget, that life demands pauses, that success cannot be built on our own destruction, that behind the performance there is a person. And sometimes, the most strategic decision of the journey is to stop, breathe, and return to the center dot. As if she had told the world, and perhaps you too, that her peace is worth more than any podium, that her inner integrity is more valuable than any external validation. And that changes everything. It changes how we look at ourselves, how we demand of ourselves, how we teach others to treat us. This kind of decision doesn't have a spotlight. It doesn't have a replay, but it does have consequences. She paved the way for other voices, for other stories, for a new mindset about what really matters. And there was no need to shout. It was in the silence, right there, in the blind spot of the competition, that Simone took her highest leap, not with her body, but with her soul. Right in the comments, I'm on this journey too. After the invisible decision comes the visible consequence. And that's where many people are mistaken, thinking that the story ends with the giving up. But the truth is that the real turnaround begins right there. Simone didn't disappear. She didn't retreat into oblivion. She came back. But not as the same person who left. She came back different, more whole, more centered, more in control of herself. And the most impressive thing, she came back without the need to prove anything to anyone. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't about the medal. It was about presence. And that completely changed the meaning of the word victory. The Simone that the world saw later was not just an athlete. She was a living example of emotional strength, of an unshakable mentality, of a transformation that has no physical form, but that can be seen in the eyes. She did not return to fit into expectations. She returned to show that there is another way to exist in high performance, a more human, more truthful way, more aligned with who you really are. The impact of this goes far beyond sports. It is a revelation for everyone who, at some point, has felt forced to remain silent to maintain an image. For everyone who has stifled their pain so as not to ruin the show. And the most beautiful thing about this part of the journey, it's that the world that once pointed the finger now listens when she speaks. Because courage has this effect. First it scares, then it liberates. Her phrase, "I'm not just a gymnast, I'm human," crossed the world as an urgent reminder that performance without health is not an achievement, it's a disguised demand. That an image without truth is just emotional makeup. And that the true gold in life is not in what you achieve externally, but in what you regain internally. Simone became a symbol of something that was dormant in many people: the right to feel, the right to pause, the right to start over in one's own way. And the most curious thing is that, by stopping, she moved forward. By disappointing other people's expectations, she reconnected with her own essence. And that, even if it doesn't appear on the podium, is the real medal. The one that no one can take away. This new public image, built not on perfection but on vulnerability, has opened up space for conversations that had never been had before. Today, when someone talks about mental health in sports, about psychological pressure, about the silent pain that comes from success, her name is there, not as a victim, but as a leader. As a woman who decided to put her soul at the center of the equation. And it was this decision that resonated, not only on the court, but behind the scenes in the lives of many people who saw themselves in her. her journey became a beacon. And those who have the courage to look at this beacon with honesty will hardly ever remain the same. Because Simone's story is not about gymnastics, it is about truth, about emotional integrity, about rebuilding identity, and above all, about the power to come back, not in the way they expect, but in the way you choose. Comment here, human being comes first. Many times have you found yourself smiling on the outside while falling apart on the inside? How many times have you put on your armor of strength only for no one to notice that, on the inside, you were at your limit? Simone Biles' story reveals a truth that many people live in silence: the fear of disappointing those who expect more from you than you can deliver. And maybe, if you've come this far, it's because this feeling has also hit you inside. That pressure that comes from all sides, from family, work, society, and that puts you in a cycle where stopping seems like a crime, resting seems like weakness, and asking for help is seen as defeat. But what if it isn't? What if stopping is the first step to rebuilding yourself in a more solid way? What if acknowledging your pain is precisely the gateway to a new phase? What if you, like Simone, have the chance to experience a turning point that no one needs to applaud to be real? Because sometimes, the decision that changes everything doesn't happen in front of an audience or cameras. It happens in a dark room, in a hidden tear, the moment you decide that enough is enough, that you're no longer going to live according to other people's expectations. That, this time, the priority will be you. I don't know what you're carrying right now. Maybe it's the exhaustion of trying to prove that you're enough. Maybe it's the fear of disappointing someone who always demanded perfection from you. Maybe it's that old pain that you never had the space to process. Or maybe it's just the feeling of losing yourself. But what Simone's story shows, and what's true for me, for you, for anyone, is that no one is going to come and rescue you. The turning point begins when you decide to rescue yourself. And this decision doesn't need to be grand. It doesn't need to be announced or approved. It can be subtle, silent, internal. It could simply be saying, I'm not going to keep pretending today. It could be choosing to rest, to step away, to ask for help, to say no. It could be choosing to listen to yourself for the first time in a long time. And that choice, no matter how small it may seem, is the starting point for a real transformation. Because what separates those who collapse from those who build is not talent, not fame, not opportunity. It is what a person decides to do in silence, when no one is watching, when the world expects them to continue, but they feel like they can't do it anymore. And in that moment, there is power. There is a new beginning. There is the chance for you to choose a journey where your health, your identity, and your truth come before performance. So now, look at your own story. When was the last time you chose yourself? When was the last time you truly listened to yourself? What silent decision can you make today that will change everything from now on? Because yes, you can also experience your own change. It doesn't have to be spectacular. It just has to be honest. Write it down. Today I choose to return to myself. If you've come this far, it's because some part of this story has found something inside you. Maybe it reminded you of your own journey. Maybe it activated a decision that was kept hidden, waiting for the right moment to happen. And if this content made sense to you, if it touched you in some way, subscribe to the channel. Not only so, you don't miss the next videos, but because this is what this space is for conversations that poke fun, that welcome, and that make us remember who we are, even when the world tries to make us forget. Leave it here in the comments. This message was for me. It's our silent code that you stayed until the end, and that you're with us in this search for meaning, for presence, for truth. And if this video gave you that feeling of, this is what I needed to hear today, click the like button. It doesn't just serve to engage, it serves as a sign that this conversation needs to continue, and that it's worth keeping this space alive. There's a video here on the side that complements this subject. Click and continue with me there. We still have a lot to discover together.